All right, welcome back for part two of part one, and I will be your host. There I am. This is not me. I am right here. Yes, I am completely geeking out in the screencast thing. This is definitely tapping into my deeper nerdness. But let's take a look. Let's keep going. So we were talking before about populations and how they grow. We were taking a big look at China and India and how their populations are expected to grow in the future, the population of the Earth. So let's just take a look here. Let's keep moving on. All right, so taking a look at birth rates and death rates, as you can see here, this is all from 2006 data. There wasn't much I could find on current data, so I don't know how often this is done. But what the book was using was stuff from 2006, and take a look at the death rates and the birth rates from a lot of these different countries. And you're going to see here a place called Oceania. I don't even know if, whoops, let me get myself back up there. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But let me get myself a pointer so we know we're talking about the same place right here, Oceania. And I'm going to show you a map on that. It'll make more sense. But let's take a look at some of these numbers here. So obviously we're comparing developing and developed countries again. And they even pull China out of the numbers, which is kind of interesting. We take a look at individual countries and continents and different regions of the planet, which is kind of interesting in how this is broken up. And that area there, Oceania, that will, again, be important in a second. So take a look at these questions here. Who has the highest birth rate, death rate, and the lowest? And take a look at those numbers. I'll give you a second. Here's Oceania, and it's taken that whole region of the Pacific there, which includes Australia and Papua New Guinea, and I would imagine parts of New Zealand and some of these smaller island chains. Most of them you've probably never even heard of, and a lot of them are still, I guess, fall under some European countries, like New Caledonia is part of France, and part of Samoa. There's two islands in Samoa. I don't know if you can see them there. One is the United States, and it's called American Samoa, and the other is not. I believe that's Western Samoa. I'm not quite sure if I got that right. But yeah, take a look at those places there. That is the region we call Oceania. And here's population growth as it's going to be projected from 2006 to 2025. And again, man, look at China and India. Look at those numbers in comparison to everybody else, even the United States at 300 million. Take a look at what's going to happen here in China. 1.3 billion up to 1.5 billion. 1.1 billion for India up to 1.4. And we're not even going to come close to that. All right, so I want to give you a map of Asia because we keep talking about India and China, and I want you to know exactly where they are because they are not necessarily the best of friends, India and China. They tend to be military rivals. So let's take a look. Take a look at the size of Russia in comparison to China and India and how their population is so low. I'm going to go back up a slide so you can take a look at that. So take a look at Russia at 130 to 142 million from 2006 to 2025. And take a look at the number that you're going to have in India and China. And then when you come down and you look at that map again, let's see if we get that map. Okay, someday I'll get you that map. Here it comes. take a look at that. Just the amount of space that's available, and I know that Russia, a lot of that is not the most habitable. It's a lot of snow and ice, but still, that the amount of geographic area covered by Russia is so much larger than India and China, yet the population numbers are going to be so much different. It's tremendous. Okay, so we do have a decline in fertility rates, and that's obviously how many babies every woman is going to have. It's not enough to stabilize the world's populations. That's not going to happen, but at least anytime soon. So let's take a look. We got some new terms here. First is replacement level fertility. I'll let you read that. Okay, so in order for them to replace themselves, and there's two parents, so obviously the replacement level has to be 2. And there's really no way around it. So there it is, 2, right there. Okay, total fertility rate, and this is the average number of children a woman has during her reproductive years. And so and obviously there's a lot of factors that are going to affect that. So we're going to get some interesting numbers, and that's where we get those averages of like 0.5s, and because no one's having half a kid. Don't forget. So let's see here. In 2006, here was what we were looking at. Global total fertility rate, 2.7 women per children. 2.7. It's a really strange number. So take a look how that compares. I'll let you take a look at these two. Again, we're looking at developed countries versus developing countries. Okay, so where do we fit into this? Where are our numbers going to come from? Let's take a look. Okay, so here it is for the United States. We added 2.9 million in 2006. 59% occurred because of the following, and 41% because of those numbers. So something that we have to think about when we're looking at this, since 41% is coming in from immigration, that means that that number of people is decreasing population somewhere else. So it's not as though our population is going up at the same rate that somebody else is going. It depends on where they're coming from, what have you. Now, if that 41% came from China or India, that's not going to make a dent in the populations of China or India. I mean, make a big difference here, but not so much there. So here we go, taking a look at the United States. I love the family here. Look at them. They're so cute. And there's a number here you need to take, or a word that you need to take a look at. This word here is baby boom. And a baby boom is a period where there is a large increase in the rate of births, and that happened between 1946 and 64. And we'll take a look at that in a second and see what kind of happened here. There was also a baby bust, and we'll take a look at those two terms in a second. But let's take a look at the times. There was a baby boom right after World War II, and followed by a baby bust, a decline, and then there was an echo baby boom, which means there was a small boom after, and they're relating it to this original baby boom here. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to why a baby boom occurred after World War II. All these soldiers returning home and what have you, and people, I don't know. You can Google it yourself. Try to find out. It's beyond the scope of this class, but who knows? Maybe there'll be another baby boom again, or maybe there'll be another baby bust. I do not know. Go ahead and ask your history teacher. They could tell you more, I'm sure. Okay, so here are our new terms. Baby boom. All right, baby boomers, and these are those people that were born right after World War II. And then there's a baby bust, just a decrease in birth rate. All right, but we need to know those terms. Very important. Okay, so here's that trend again. So we have that baby boom, the bust, and then the echo baby boom. Now, that echo baby boom is nothing compared to what we had right after World War II. So again, go ask your history teachers, see if they can explain to you why this happened. It would be interesting. I would love their perspective. All right, let's take a look at how things have changed for Americans in the past 100 years. Take a look at this. This is great stuff. We're looking at life expectancy, married women working, how many people graduate from high school, homes with toilets that flush, homes with electricity, people who live in the suburbs, hourly manufacturing job wage. I don't even know what that means. Ooh, number of homicides. That's kind of depressing. Take a look at those numbers. All right, so these are some things that affect fertility rates and the rate of birth. And I mean, this is a good list. Don't get me wrong. I like the list, but I think there's a lot of other things that can affect this as well. And when you read this section in the chapter, every one of these is explained a little bit more in depth than what we can go through in this slide. So you will need to look at the chapter to answer some of the questions, but this gives us a little list. I wonder if by looking at this you can think of any more reasons. We'll see. And here are some things that affect death rate. They've been going down because of increased food supplies, better nutrition. I don't know how that's possible because nutrition is probably at an all-time low. We have the highest rate of diabetes and obesity that we've had in who knows how long. I mean, medicine's improved and sanitation has definitely improved. We have safer water supplies. I looked at this infant mortality rate, things that are affecting that. So inadequate pre and postnatal care, drug addiction, teen birth rate, all of those things are going to affect infant mortality. Here are some new terms. I'll let you read through those. Migration, immigration, emigration, life expectancy, and infant mortality. All right, so here's a case study on immigration. Since the 1820s, the United States has admitted almost twice as many immigrants and refugees as all other countries combined. And take a look at this chart here at the number of immigrants that have come into the United States, with the most occurring, quite recently. Take a look at this big spike right here. It's a pretty big spike, and we also had other spikes here in 1907, 1914. A lot of factors that caused that. So you're going to need to read the case study on page 177. You're going to have to read this question. It will be on the handout, so you can take a look at it there. I will not leave that up there. Here's some things for you to think about that will help you answer that question. Be sure you defend it. Be sure you explain it well. AP level. The age structure of a population can have a very large impact on how that population will grow in the near future. We're going to look specifically at those individuals aged below 15 because, believe it or not, they have the largest impact on how a population will increase or decrease over time. And those changes in population can have huge economic and social impacts as well. If we take a look at this graph, and I'm going to do some circling here. In this scenario, we have a large number of individuals between the ages of, below 15, and that's going to result in a rapidly expanding population. On the other extreme, we have populations that have a low number of individuals below 15 years old, and that's going to have a decline in population. And we can see here in the center what happens that creates a stable and a slowly expanding population. And here are some percentages that are associated with each of these. 1.5 to 3% growth is considered expanding rapidly, whereas obviously a negative amount of growth will result in a declining population. You can see what countries and what percentages are associated with these. Now, these are obviously not all the countries in the world, but it'll give you an example of some countries that are following this trend. So this is a comparison of developed and developing countries, and we're going to look at the number of individuals at each age group. You can compare how they differ. You can also compare the number of males to females, and I would like to pay special attention to the number of females here. And we can see that there is a significant decline, or a significant lower number in comparison to males. We're talking to millions of individuals here, and we will see what's causing that. This graph is very interesting. It shows how the number of baby boomers have shifted in the population of the United States, and it also projects that up until 2035. So we can see here in 1955 the numbers, how they have shifted throughout time. The big result is, I believe, that the number of individuals that are going to be between 70 and 80 plus years old, right here at the top, is increasing at a rate that is going to have huge impact on our population. We're going to see how that's affecting other countries now and what that can mean for us in the future. I'll give you a second. Why don't you jot down your ideas, maybe press pause at this point and answer these questions. So you really got to think about how the shift in population is going to affect us in the future and what is causing that shift. There's some things we need to know to give us a better perspective on what's happening here in the world. 14% of the population is in a stabilizing or declining population number situation. That leaves a significant amount of the population in an either slowly increasing or rapidly increasing population number. This decline that some countries are seeing are going to have some definite long-term problems, and there are some things that can lead to a rapid decrease in the population, especially of young adults. And there's a special emphasis in the book that is placed on AIDS, but there's also other diseases as well. It's not just AIDS, but AIDS seems to be one that people bring up pretty consistently. And what they do not bring up is war, and I find that to be an intriguing thing. But they do throw the positive ray of sunshine out there and mention that global action will help promote peace. Unfortunately, global action is not something that happens really easily, so I wouldn't put my money on that. Let's take a look at Ebola to see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, as you've seen Ebola in the news, what factors do you think that are required to make people actually react and do something about Ebola? And I'd like to know what you think we should do. Had to press pause there as an airplane was flying over the house. All right, let's keep going. Aging populations have a really large impact on the global economy and the economy of the individual countries. And we could take a look at this graph and see how that is changing over time. The number of individuals in each age category is shifting tremendously. Here in red, we have the individuals that are under age 15, and we can see over years how that is decreasing. We could take a look and see how those individuals 60 and over and 80 and over in particular are increasing tremendously. Now, 80 and over is not at this higher percentage that we see over here, but those individuals require a amount of care that we must prepare as a country to take care of, and especially those individuals that are 60 and over. And that's not to say that we might actually increase more than this. And so we really need to have some kind of a plan. There are some problems that are associated with a rapid population decline. I'm not going to read these to you. I'll let you take a look. Think about those for a second. Which do you think is the most important that we should focus on as a nation? Now, one thing that we know is that as a country becomes more developed, it begins to trend toward a declining population. And let's take a look at those stages here. We have a pre-industrial stage, which is going to shift to a transitional stage, and then ultimately an industrial stage. And there is a graph that represents this change, or this shift rather, in the number of individuals in a certain population. So let's take a look here. And this line in green is showing the total population and how it increases as we shift from a pre-industrial to transitional to industrial and post-industrial stage, and how the birth rate goes down and the death rate also goes down. And now we've already discussed the factors that will bring a birth rate down, and we know that there are other factors that will bring a death rate down, such as improved medicine and improved hygiene and things like that. The book places a special emphasis on what we usually consider the rights of women. And as women become more educated and as they hold higher paying jobs, we tend to see a decrease in the average number of children per female. And also family planning has had a big part of this. Now, the issue of family planning has created quite a bit of debate. I'm not going to state whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just showing you the effects. You can decide for yourself. The book suggests these possible ways of slowing population growth. Do we invest in family planning? How is it that we reduce poverty? And how do we elevate the status of women? I don't know if there are easy solutions to this. I don't think there are at all. Those are some really difficult things to overcome. If we take a look at India and China, they have been faced with this huge population growth, and it's having an impact on their economy and their amount of resources available, and just requiring that something be done. Now, I'm sure we've all heard about the things that China has done to cut down its birth rate with the one child per household, and India has not tried something that dramatic as of yet, but there are two different types of governments altogether, and so China has come under a lot of criticism for its policies, but there needs to be some solution, and that's what they came up with. I'm not judging it as good or bad again, but you have to do that for yourself, and maybe when the problems become extreme, the attitude of the individuals in a population will change, but who knows? We can't predict that because there's a lot of factors, religious and philosophical and what have you. Here's a comparison of India and China from numbers in 2006. Again, we're looking at 2006, and I'm not going to read this to you because it's a little dramatic, but take a look, maybe press pause and stare at it a little bit and do a comparison of what we see between India and China. And there's a little bit of difference. China seems to be above India in a lot of things, except when we get to some areas such as illiteracy. The illiteracy rate is much lower in China compared to India. Infant mortality rate in India is significantly higher than it is in China. And the percentage of individuals living below $2 a day, that's pretty high in India. So India has made attempts. Whoops. Let me get back there. India has made attempts to lower its population growth, but there are some things that are affecting them, and you can take a look at those here on this slide. The status of women in poverty are things that people speak of the most, and there's obviously a lack of agreement on how best to do that. China, on the other hand, has had much different results, and they have had some changes in their policy, and we'll take a look at that in class. China has taken 300 million people out of poverty. Now, I don't know how those numbers are calculated and how accurate they are, but that is a significant amount of people. However, the population of China is still ridiculously large compared to 300 million people. So, although that is a huge improvement and that will have an effect on the number of individuals in the population, that's no way to guarantee that the population will decrease. Now, one thing that is happening in China is the trend to want male offspring to, for whatever reason, I guess pass on the family line or something. I have no idea. We don't do that much here in the United States, but it's creating a gender shift, and there are some human rights situations that you can research on your own and see how that's affecting the number of young females and some of the things that are happening to them. Here's some questions for you to think about and jot your answers down. I'm especially interested to see if this will affect how many children you decide to have in the future. Please share with me your ideas. I know some of you come from large families and maybe you wanted to have a large family of your own someday, but maybe after this you've changed your mind. So why don't you press pause at this point and answer these questions. Okay, we're getting close to wrapping this up here. So if we look at the Earth's surface, if we exclude Antarctica, the human activities that we have done so far have affected 83% of the Earth's land surface. That's the land surface. And excluding Antarctica simply because it's not that hospitable. But I'm sure if we can figure out a way to put a coffee shop there, with a name I won't mention, or possibly a fast food restaurant with some upside down yellow U's in front of it, we'll start to spread our way there and put our impact on that environment. But you can take a look here and see some of the things that we have done to affect our planet. So with this advancement in technology that we've experienced, it's really allowed us to do some great things. But unfortunately, those great things that we have done have had a huge impact on the population. And if you look at some of the pictures that we have here, we have, farming that just decimates land. And, we think of farms as this very natural, wonderful place, but we have to think about the natural environment that was there before. These were once forests that had, a lot of animals in there, and we have completely removed them to plant things like corn and soybeans and a lot of the other things that we use on a daily basis. We have removed many natural predators, and we were talking about that wolf that made its way down to the Grand Canyon, and I sent out some horrible information that wolf has been shot by a hunter, and so we're doing that as well. And you can take a look here and look at some of these other things. There's a nice big truck. Some of us like to have really big trucks, but those big trucks, they produce a lot of waste, by the burning of fossil fuels. Now, I know they show this big truck right here, but there's also a lot of other things that we have to worry about, especially here in Los Angeles. With the Port of Los Angeles, you might not realize that the number of ships that come into that port produce a huge amount of waste, and that area in San Pedro is known to have a very large amount of particulate matter. Those are fine particles that are floating through the air, and there is some speculation that the asthma rate of children in that area has increased because of the increased amount of shipping. And we're pretty close to that as well, and that's just going to put more trucks on the road. And in the city of Bell, we know that going up the 710 freeway, there's a large amount of trucks. So it's not just people moving around, it's all of our goods that move around as well. And those goods come into the Port of Los Angeles, and they go to many other states, and so we have to think about that as well. We're paying for the economies of other states with our own health, and we have to decide as a state, what we're going to do about that, and as a country, if that's okay. Now, of course, people in other states think it's fine, but of course, here as we end up with, lung cancer and emphysema and asthma and other strange diseases, we have to make some decisions for ourselves. And so with that, we get to the end of part 1 of chapter 9.